So let's take a look at Building 7 and see if there's any similarity. First, what will we be comparing it to? 1, sudden onset of destruction at the base of the building. A straight down symmetrical collapse into its own footprint. 3, demolition waves removing column support. 4, free fall speed through the path of greatest resistance. 5, a total dismemberment of the steel structure for shipment. 6, minimal damage to adjacent structures. 7, sounds and flashes of explosions. 8, enormous clouds of pulverized concrete. 9, squibs or explosive charges that go off at the wrong time sometimes, as you'll see. And 10, chemical evidence of cutter charges. We have the evidence. Now, fire cannot produce any one of these characteristics of controlled demolition, let alone all 10. So we'll be looking at the fire theory in that light, and to see if the buildings exhibit any of these characteristics of controlled demolition. In addition, we have government documentation, because controlled demolitions have a fair amount of documentation. It's not an easy thing to get through the building departments. We have foreknowledge, because we know in advance. It takes months of planning and engineering for these things. We have expert corroboration. The experts agree, yeah, that was a controlled demolition for sure. Plenty of video documentation, all of which adds up to a supported hypothesis that a particular building was brought down by controlled demolition. So this is the path we will take to see if Building 7 might fall into this category. Many of you don't know about Building 7 because we have not seen it on the mainstream media since about the first or second day after 9/11. How many of you have never heard of Building 7? Anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, about 18, 19. Thank you. This is a 47-story skyscraper, easily the highest building in 33 of our states. It was only dwarfed in its adjacency to what was, at one time, the 2 highest buildings in the world. It was a football field's length, about 350 feet from World Trade Center 1. And no plane hit this building. So let's take a closer look. It's on the north side of the North Tower, and this is the building standing yet in its glory. It sustained, as you can see, some pelting by World Trade Center 1 when it came down, and it had a couple of fires initially, which grew into, we're told by NIST, about 8 fires on various floors. Here's a couple of them on the 12th and 13th floor. Curiously enough, the floors occupied by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which lost thousands of files related to hundreds of cases it was actively pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron and WorldCom. So we at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, we're not pointing fingers, but we will name a few names as where a real investigation might start. In other words, is this a coincidence? That needs to be answered. You can see across from World Trade Center 1, the devastation, Building 7 still standing. It fell down, if you will, with a collapse in quotes, because I think we'll see that it might have been aided. So the building is not engulfed in flames, and there's no videos, photographs that show such a thing. So let's test our hypothesis and see if these 10 characteristics are present, starting with, do we have a sudden onset of destruction at the base of the structure, which is not characteristic, as we'll see, or as I mentioned, by fire. Let's listen to this particular emergency worker in the morning of 9/11.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The top floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a cloud of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. And then, about a second later, the bottom floor caved out, and the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground.
sound of a clap of thunder, a shock wave ripping through the building, windows busting out, and then the building coming down. That's a very important sequence of events. We're not talking about a building that has some kind of slow failure, which, by the way, we're told by NIST occurs at about the 13th floor. Now, that's their new theory. Well, let's take a look, our first look, perhaps at Building 7 coming down, as narrated by Dan Rather.
What you're seeing are high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Describe that. If you want to go to videotape the collapse of this building. It's amazing, incredible picture word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
These newspaper reporters tend to tell it like it is on the first day. Now, Dan Rather has never repeated those comments, and I don't know why, but I assume there's a reason. So we have a sudden onset, and I just want to show you that
what you're seeing are high shots.
That occurs at the penthouse, this sudden onset, which is over the core columns, which we'll be discussing. All at once. Boom. Now that's actually a few seconds before that. There is the collapse of the east penthouse, but it as well is sudden. Do we have a straight down and symmetric collapse into the building's footprint? Straight down, smooth, symmetrical. And you get to see this one a few different ways. You can watch those shock waves ripping up through the windows on the right side. Now there's no fire engulfing the building. To be fair, there is some smoke, which I'll show you on the back side. Do we have a collapse into its own footprint?
Yes.
Pretty much. Let's go to number 3. Do we have demolition waves? Or how do these demolition waves remove the column support? Well, this building was fairly unusual. It's trapezoidal in shape. These are the core columns. In order to have a symmetrical, smooth collapse, we have to have the collapse of all the core columns first within 1/10 of a second of each other. And then within 1/2 a second after that, the perimeter columns have to fail within 1/10 of a second of each other. I'll ask the question, can fire accomplish that? Oh, we're done. Number 4, do we have a free fall speed through the path of greatest resistance? Well, in this montage, you can see second by second the building gaining downward momentum, indicating the force of gravity is unimpeded as the building falls through the path of greatest resistance. You can plot it on a graph of drop distance versus time, and it fits the curve almost perfectly, meaning the columns gave virtually no resistance. Do we have the total dismemberment of the steel structure? Well, this 47-story skyscraper has been reduced to 4 stories. This frame was a braced and moment frame, meaning that much of this frame was welded together. At the moment frames, the columns were welded from the base all the way up. How could that building collapse like a house of cards, all laid flat, nice and neatly, without any airspace, greater than 4 stories? Do we have minimal damage to the adjacent structures? Indeed, a very, very minimal damage. Do we have sounds of explosions? Let's listen to Craig Bartner of the New York Police Department.
And the whole time you hear boom, 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 boom. So, I think I know an explosion when I hear it, you know. I was real close to Building 7 when it fell down, and running away from that sucked. That's one of the things that I live with all the time, and I don't know, but that didn't sound like just a building falling down on me while I'm running right from it. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony down there hearing explosions. I didn't see any reason for that building to fall down the way it did, and a lot of guys should be saying the same thing.